be able to join us and meet some of the students that are currently going through that program and get some questions answered. So trying to get us back on track and kind of keep quick time here, I want to start with introductions. I'm going to go through and kind of tell you a little bit about each of these individuals. We have first Kelly. Kelly, you know, wave, say hi.
Hi.
So Kelly's background had her teaching English abroad. She was also a preschool teacher before she came to Prime, and is now a full stack developer at a startup in Minneapolis. We also have Savio. Hey, Savio.
Hello.
Hey. Savio was an accountant for over 7 years, and he read a New York Times article about coding boot camps, and the rest is history, as they say. Savio is now an associate software engineer at a small software consulting company called Azent locally. I think, oh, we did, Josh, you're here just in time, Josh. Excellent. And we also have Josh. Josh came to us from a job in sales and had also done some freelance design and development jobs prior to Prime. But he's looking to transition more kind of full-fledged into the industry. He's now a technical project manager at Fjorge, and they partner with advertising and advertising agencies and help them to provide technical development capabilities and capacity. And last but not least, we have Ian.
Hello.
Which the first time I think the first time I slacked with Ian, we were talking about a scholarship that was targeted at women, and we were making sure that she got it, because Ian is not traditionally a name that we had made an inference on there. But Ian came to us from an event planning background, and she had done some independent consultant stuff, making websites and marketing materials for small businesses. She's now a software engineer at an organization called Codacy, which is an online term life insurance company. So I think we're going to just kind of dive into some questions that we've heard from some folks, and just kind of see what you guys have to say, and I will stop talking and let you guys talk. Kind of starting at the beginning, talking about kind of life before Prime. You know, Savio, your story has always stuck with us as being, you know, kind of this kind of random thing of like, oh, I saw this article, I read this thing in the New York Times, and that kind of, you know, pivoted your life's direction a little bit. Do any of, you know, for any of you guys that want to speak to it, can you tell us about, you know, how you made that jump to deciding to think about coding boot camp? And, you know, were you confident at the time when you're starting? Did you feel like it was a big leap of faith? Like, you know, what was the first step in your journey like?
I think I can go first. You know, it was definitely like a huge leap of faith. I was lucky enough to maintain a full-time job for those 7 years at 2 different companies, and there was never really a gap. So for me to voluntarily decide that I'm going to be unemployed to do this program, it was a little jarring at first, and you know, sometimes you just have to take that step. But once I made that decision, and once I went through the application process, the interview process, spoke with other people that went through similar programs, I knew that this was the right choice for me, because with my work experience, I felt like all I needed to do was learn the skills, and I would be in an industry and in a role that I would just truly love.
I remember for me, it was also a leap of faith. I had considered computer science when I was in college, but very briefly. And then about 6 months ago, I was out to eat breakfast with my mom, and she was talking about Amazon coming and how that would be a great job to work in the technical field. And I thought, yeah, that's true. And then I had heard about Prime, so I looked into it more, and the more I read about it, the more wonderful it sounded. And I had come from a background where I'd kind of moved around a lot and not been too afraid of taking leaps of faith, because I feel like you always learn a lot. And when I was looking at Prime, I was thinking that worst case scenario, I try it out and I realize I don't like it, and then I've already learned an awesome skill set and have my foot in the door somewhere. So no matter what, it seemed like a good option, and then I was relieved to find out that I actually really liked it. So
I wasn't at all confident. Anybody who was at Prime at the same time as I was can vouch for this. And I think I called it a Hail Mary pass once or twice, you know, where I was like, well, I guess I'll just try the long shot thing and see if it works. And it worked out great.
Cool. Josh, what was your kind of kicking off your first exposure, and what made you take the leap?
I don't know. I think it was something that I looked at for a while, and then I think I mentioned the Star Tribune article maybe was something that just kind of pushed me over the edge of like, let's take the leap and do this. We've talked about kind of imposter syndrome, and I probably had a little bit of that at the application stage. So I'm glad I took the leap.
And one introduction that I missed, you guys may have counted 5 talking head boxes at the bottom, and I only introduced 4 people, or 6, I guess if you count me. The gentleman in the teal box down there is Fred Sheehan. Fred is our director of student experience at Prime. He's in the office today. I'm at home. But Fred helps us to organize our the admissions process, as well as really helping students with kind of processing life as they're going through the program, and that can be a big part of it. But he's often one of the first faces that people see. I don't know, if Fred, if you want to give a little bit about your background quick.
Sure. So, hi everyone, and I'm really hoping to speak with you more in the future too. It's usually one of the points of contact. I'll have a lot of conversations with folks, answer any questions at all. Experience tends to entail, what it feels like, and what typically are the highs and lows of the process, and how people can best prepare for. The background, as Mark was saying, so I started off initially in psychology. I did a lot of clinical social psych, research psych, and pivoted into education from there. And for education, I've done master's in education through Harvard University. I've worked in higher educational settings and done curriculum development for one of the grad schools at Harvard. And from there, I pivoted into corporate education. So in working in the corporate spaces for the last half a dozen years, I got a great opportunity to see some of the HR, talent acquisition sides, and also what organizational effectiveness, learning, and onboarding tends to look like within a professional setting. So we've really tried to bring that into the constructs, the environment, the community aspects that we build out at Prime. And it's one of the things I really love most about working here is just the ability to meet some really tremendously amazing folks from a range of different backgrounds in the future.
Thanks, Fred. So as Fred mentioned, he's often kind of one of the first faces that people see as part of the application process. Our application process starts with an online application and then moves into an in-person interview that happens with Fred and Christy, who's somebody who helps him on our staff with those things. I'm curious to hear you guys. So from your perspective as applicants, what was your impression of that application process? How daunting was it? Were you guys confident going into it? Did you feel shaky about it, or were you? How was the process for you?
I thought it was great. I mean, Fred is one of the nicest interviews I've ever had, and as someone that interviews people now, like, I strive to be that good. You're kind of my role model there, Fred. But I think I was very nervous going into it, and yeah, it was a very enjoyable process.
I thought it was really exciting because I had no prior experience with coding and anything like that, and I thought it was so cool the first time I got something up on the web that I actually did that. And so doing the application, I feel like gave me a good idea that this is actually something I would like. And then going into Prime and seeing the place and meeting Fred was wonderful too. I agree.
The application process for me was pleasant. Like, in high school, I was very interested with the web. Used to make, websites for fun on the side, but it never really, came from, nothing really ever came from that. And then I also, like, going through the actual application, when you got to the, the little challenges that you have in there, it was fun because I didn't get to solve problems very much on a day-to-day basis. So those little problems got me into this mentality that, like, oh, could be a career where, like, all day I'm dealing with problems and solving problems, and getting creative on how I want to deal with issues. So the further along I went in the application, the more I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So good experience.
I thought it was pretty daunting at first, and I was pretty nervous, but it ended up feeling kind of intimidating, but it went okay. Fred was great. Mark was great. Everybody was really good about helping me through the process, and made me feel really comfortable and made it feel like I could do it.
Awesome. So what about so after you guys were offered admissions and you get in, the first stage in that is pre-work, which is a little more disconnected from your cohort, but can you guys talk a little bit about your pre-work experience and kind of how that how that prepared you for the classroom? I'll pick on Kelly to start.
I felt like the pre-work, when I got into Prime, I realized how much I'd learned, but when I was going through it, I felt like it was a little slower than I was expecting. But then once I got into Prime, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, I learned so much. And then we started using it more. And I wish that during the pre-work, I had been a little bit more disciplined about doing stuff on my own instead of just completing the challenges, because I think that would have really helped. And I realized that when I was actually in the regular or in the in-class portion, when I would supplement my learning by building something on my own outside, I learned much better. So that's something I think I took from the pre-work, is that would have been very valuable.
Yeah, I think during the pre-work, there's so much anticipation to get into the classroom that it felt slow, and like you're really looking forward to what's next. But I think it's a really valuable experience to kind of get everyone on the same page, so that when they get into the classroom, everyone's kind of speaking the same language.
So speaking of that, kind of once, a big part of the Prime experience that students talk to us about a lot is the kind of the camaraderie in the classroom and what that feels like. So when can you guys speak a little bit to how you connected with your cohort mates and kind of when you felt that connection happen? Like was it from day one? Was it during pre-work? When did you start to feel like a group?
For my group, we were actually a pretty quiet group during pre-work, so really nobody talked to each other. So it was really hard then. And for me, I was also working all the way through pre-work. I know some people gave themselves 2 weeks before, but it was like I got to the end of pre-work, and then by Monday I was jumping right into tier 2. That first week you bond pretty quickly with your cohort mates, because you get to hear everybody's stories, and you know that everybody is really driven to the same goal. And I think we all connected pretty quickly in our cohort.
That was my experience too. And it's such an environment that's so strongly dedicated to learning, and you're with all of these people who are dedicated to learning with you and to helping each other through this. And it really helps people bond, and people be able to help one another through this incredible shared experience and the incredible amount of work.
Yeah, I think within a week we were bonding, and a lot of our cohort was in on the weekends and doing stuff, kind of activities outside of our classwork. And then I think it really showed at graduation, just kind of the emotion that was on display there and how tight-knit we had become.
Yeah, I thought it was really amazing to see how everyone comes together, both in highs and lows. And you could really see the bonding that people had, especially when someone was struggling with something, that another person would come in and relate to them and pick them up. And I felt the same way during graduation, and especially during the final presentations. Watching everyone be nervous for that together, I think really made me feel super connected to everyone there, and realize that we're all going through this together and we've all got each other's backs.
So were there any kind of unexpected connections or unexpected friendships and relationships that developed in the cohort? I know that sometimes some of what we hear is like, oh, like this, this 18-year-old and this 50-year-old became super good friends, and like, it's kind of the unusual bondings. Do you guys have any of those in any of your cohorts?
I think just
Definitely
overall,
the people. Go ahead.
overall, it was a diverse cohort, and I think we all bonded. So it was just an example of it. Really wasn't about our past backgrounds or our past experiences. It was just shared experience that we had through the course of it that brought us all together in a really unique way. Cool.
Yeah, it really allows people to get together and become friends with each other who would never have met each other anywhere else.
That's awesome. How many of you guys have have you guys all stayed in touch with your cohort mates?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're going out for brunch next weekend, I think.
Yeah, I just had lunch with some people yesterday, and I actually work with a bunch of people from Prime, so that's great too, including my cohort.
Awesome. So kind of moving into, we're kind of moving a little bit more into the Prime experience proper. It's a kind of a new kind of educational experience. It's not something, I guess, how would you guys say Prime related to past educational experiences that you've had? Like, how was the classroom different, or what about your experience surprised you or was different than maybe what you were expecting coming in with a necessarily a super clear understanding of what you were getting into all the time?
It was way more hands-on than any other educational experience I've had. And it was also like scaffolded in a different way. I felt like traditionally I'd like learned a bunch of information and then had a test and then I was done. And with Prime, it was like you learn a little bit and then you do something and then you learn a little bit more and then you do something. And that made me feel like I could really get into the knowledge a little deeper and faster and get a better understanding that stuck instead of just learning a bunch of stuff, taking a test and forgetting it.
Yeah, I think Prime was pretty much like the way the program was structured is kind of what I expected. But I guess the one thing that would have surprised me, or that did surprise me, is that whole process of just you're going to take in this like little chunk of information and then you're going to do something with it and then you're going to move on. Then you feel like, oh, I'm not really retaining all of this. Is this the right way to go? And then 3 weeks later, you're just like naturally recalling all the stuff that you learned and applying it all. And you're like, oh, I actually remembered this random bit of information from week 1. Now it's like week 4. So that was a surprise how much you're like retaining from the way the program is run.
Or how much of it just sort of mysteriously shows up several weeks down the line. Like things in week, 2, you're like, I will never understand this. And then like week 5, it comes up and you're like, oh yeah, it's really simple. And it just suddenly clicked somewhere.
Outside of that, were there any big surprises that you guys didn't expect, whether it was from kind of the interaction or or kind of what the environment was like, or how kind of, I guess, in terms of even the expectations of how much you had to work versus kind of what you would expect?
I was told that it would be 60 to 70 hours a week, and I'm pretty sure that some weeks that was a lowball estimate for me. To be honest, like I worked a ton, and part of this thing that maybe surprised me the most was the fact that actually I was capable of doing that, and I did fine. I did great. And the fact that I was able to do that, that I had wells of things that I think I maybe didn't entirely know, was a big surprise. It was also a surprise. I mean, it shouldn't have surprised me, but the staff really cares. Like, you're not a number. Like, they really care about you, and they're dedicated to your success. And that was really lovely. And I don't know that I was expecting that not to be the case, but I was happily surprised with how much it was the case.
I don't think I was expecting as much of like the group interaction. I thought it would be more individual. You learn this and kind of tested on it. So that aspect of it was really surprising, and probably the most valuable part, I think, is just to kind of experience some of that engineered stress, I guess I'd call it. And I see it all the time in the workplace now, and it's something that I find very valuable in developers that we bring on, is having experience with that. And I think it's, for people that go through Prime, I know that they've experienced that, and I feel more confident in them being able to handle that.
Cool. Is there a point when you're kind of thinking back and each evening as you wistfully recount your time at Prime, is there something that sticks out as a hard moment, like something that was a challenge for you in your time?
I don't have a very specific moment, but there was like the first 3 weeks. It was challenging, but I was able to kind of like cruise through it, and like didn't take me long to ramp up and understand like the topics in those first couple weeks. And then like middle of week 3 or 4 hit, and for some reason like people could explain it to me 2-3 different ways, and nothing was clicking. And that feeling of imposter syndrome was just kind of like covering me from head to toe, and like going through the whole process of telling yourself that like maybe this isn't what I was meant to do, maybe I'm not really as good at this as I think I am. But it just trying to deal with that and know that like everybody around you can ask them for help, or like they're there to support you too. Going through that weekend without like internalizing it was really difficult, because you do just kind of want to like coil up into a ball when you feel like nothing is going right. So that, yeah, trying to push past that was definitely hard for me.
What was the thing that got you through that? Like, what was there a tactic or something that helped you persevere through that?
Well, so I spent a lot of the first 2 weeks making sure that if I understood something and could hear that someone else was struggling, I went to help them, because I figured if it ever came to me being stuck, that someone would come and help me. And after like a day or two, like hiding that I had no idea what was going on, finally like just letting out to a couple people, some people overheard, and having like all these cohort mates come to you and like, okay, you have to think about it this way, and this is why you're stuck, because you're like hung up on a tiny little detail. So just being able to open yourself up and really like tuck away your ego and let people know that you're struggling and you need help.
Can you guys talk a little bit about Prime? Obviously, I think a lot of people who would be listening or will watch this in the future are expect that Prime is going to be about software development, and they're expecting that you're going to come in and you're going to learn a bunch of technical stuff, and you're going to do assignments, you're going to do challenges and things like that. Can you guys speak a little bit to the other parts of Prime and the like as far as some of the speeches that you give in front of your cohorts and things like that, and how those things had an impact on you, or how they helped you kind of build those connections with people that helped with that kind of karma that you're talking about for wanting to help each other out?
I know I grew so much as a person during my time at Prime in ways that I really didn't anticipate. It's true, I figured I would be learning code, and I actually learned a lot about myself, and I think that, and how best to work with people and how best to work with me, and I think that ended up being a really amazing, really helpful thing that I might not have expected first.
Cool.
And I think the group projects really help with a lot of that too, and bonding with people and learning how to talk with people and work with them. And during some of the group projects, you run into some challenges and things aren't working, and you have to figure out how to communicate with each other to get through that so everyone feels good. And I think that that's a really important skill that I also wasn't really expecting to learn at Prime, but then was very grateful that that was such a strong component.
Mhm. Is there a point kind of within your experience in Prime that was a high water point for you that you think kind of the flip side of that last question is there a point that stands out as, you know, just the achievement or you know, kind of standing above everything, be like, yeah, this is working, or I can see my path from here?
I think graduation for sure was a point where you look back and you kind of see everything that's happened over the course of your time at Prime is kind of the pinnacle of that. But, you know, along the way, there was group projects where we were under a lot of stress and we came out of it with a success and we kind of rallied around that.
I think.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the proudest moment is easily for me was our group project. As you work through it, you know, you have all these problems and you don't think that you're going to build something cool. And once you go through the presentation and then you look back and like, oh, this is where we started and look at what we put together, and like the look on your clients' faces, because they're like, I can't believe that we got something that actually works. That was a pretty good feeling, and knowing that, you know, we actually built software. So.
Well, cool. I want to come back to your moment, Kelly. But first, Savi, can you talk a little bit about what your project was? So, you know, we've mentioned the fact that students, as part of their capstone experience, they do a project for a real world client. But like, who is your client, and kind of how did your team tackle the problem that they had?
Sure. So our client was a religious school, so it's kind of like a Sunday school. And what they needed was some sort of application to manage their lesson plan. So the problem that they had was all of their teachers are volunteers, and volunteers come and go. So when someone creates a lesson plan for second grade level students and they're gone the next year, then the incoming teacher for second grade might not have any idea what to do. And the issue with that is that those students that went through that, a student that would go through like some sort of course in second grade and goes to a new volunteer teacher in third grade, they might end up doing the same thing because there's no like centralized curriculum. So we built something to kind of, they could input all of their lesson plans into, tag which grades, topics, and have a searchable database for all of their instructors to use.
Very cool. Kelly, I interrupted. What you were about to share your proudest moment with us. What was yours?
Mine was similar. I was just going to say, after the presentation, getting to see our client and talk with her was by far like the best moment, I thought, because it made me feel like not only did I learn how to do stuff with computers, and that's fun and exciting, but I can actually do something really good with it. And I remember she had this stack of information that she was going to input into the application, and she was so excited that now she could finally do that. And seeing that it was actually going to get used and how excited she was made me feel like really proud that we could help her with that.
That's awesome. Can you provide a little bit more context? What was who was your client and what was your project?
She was the founder of Blue Watch, which is an organization that has all these resources for police officers that are vetted, so they feel comfortable going there to get things like family therapy. But there was a problem that there's kind of like they don't want anyone to know that they are going to seek help, so it needed to be anonymous and really fast because they didn't want to have any delays in getting help. And so they needed something online where people could go check out these resources and find what they need and get to it as quickly as possible. And so we built this map feature where they could find out what was near them, so they could go to a location that they liked and do it completely anonymously. And so at the end, she had the stack of all this information, all of these resources that she wanted to input into the app that we just built for her.
Cool. So for all of you guys, you know, how do you feel like the experience of working with a real client in those group projects, how did that affect your confidence kind of post Prime? Or you're like, I mean, did you feel like you had done the job at that point, or you know, was it helping you to kind of own the skills that you had learned? Josh or Ian?
I think it was a good test of like how to communicate with a client. All this new information that we had, you're in a classroom talking to all your classmates about it, and now you have someone kind of from the outside world that you have to explain not explain what you've learned, but like try and apply what you've learned in a way that they can understand or really deliver something that they can use.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think also that experience was a really good practice for getting into your real world software jobs, because you had your task and then you had a deadline, and being able to work with 2 or 3 other people at different levels to make sure you hit that deadline is like a real good preparation for people to as they go into their job. So I think that was a great takeaway.
One of the things that that is unique about Prime, and something that I think many of you guys, I know a couple of you at least have seen from both sides now, but all of you have seen from at least one side, is the idea of kind of informal mentorship, and the idea that, at Prime, part of what we do is we try and set up small groups of students with small groups of working professionals for kind of a mentoring group of 6 to 8 people overall that gets together, and really the stated objective is for you guys to get a sense as people who are new to the industry of what kind of the rules are and how things fit together. Did any of you guys have experiences in the mentorship component of the program and stuff that were interesting or were compelling or kind of stuck with you?
I still see my mentors at tech meetups all the time, and we're like, hi, and it's like, it's nice. It's like people I already know.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like a kickstart to your professional network kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah. And it was really nice because, when I was first new both to Prime and to going to meetups and things in the community, I had people there that I already knew who were already kind of dedicated to helping me figure my way through stuff. And so they, I got to sit with them and they got to explain what was going on. And it was really nice, sort of both in and out of a school setting to have that.
Very cool. For those of you who have come back on the other side as mentors, because we try and make sure that there's at least one Prime grad in each of the mentorship groups, so people can kind of make that connection. What has been your key go-to piece of advice to give people who are getting started, and what have you told them that you wish you knew when you were just getting going?
Go ahead.
I haven't started as a mentor yet. I'm starting in, I believe, March, but I ran into some people who were going into Prime, and so I got to practice a little bit. And the advice that I tell people is that you're going to think that you can't do it, and you can. And also, it's important to get some sleep.
Yeah,
what were you saying, Josh?
My advice has always been enjoy the experience. I think a lot of people in the process that I've talked to or mentored, they're always so worried about what they're learning and learning something new, and what are they going to do for their job when they get out. But I think if you just really focus on enjoying the experience, and kind of building your network within your cohort and at Prime, you'll be just fine in the end.
Cool. So can you guys tell us a little bit about the process of what just kind of the transition from you're graduating, you're in some ways finishing this process, in other ways you're just kind of getting started with your learning. What was your job hunt like after Prime? Like how did employers react to kind of you having this, well, it's kind of becoming a little more common now, but a little bit of a non-traditional background for somebody looking for roles. What kinds of feedback and reception did you guys receive?
I had a really fortunate experience getting a job, thanks to Taylor and Career Day. I had an interview during Career Day, and then the next day had a follow-up interview, and then a few days later had a job. So I had only one day off in between. And me and another person in my cohort started at the same time. And when we were starting, the people who hired us, I think, weren't really sure they had never hired anyone from Prime, and so they weren't really sure like what they were getting into. And I remember like the first week they were talking about how they were very impressed with how much we had known, and that they hadn't expected that we would be able to do as much as we could do. And since then they've hired more people from Prime. So I think they were very impressed with what Prime had taught us.
I wasn't sure that my more non-traditional background was going to do me any favors in job hunting for a tech job, but actually it ended up being really good. That a lot of the people that I interviewed with and the people who I talked to were really impressed that I had a background in like project management and planning things and working with other people, and people were like, wow, that's a really, you know, not the stereotypical thing we expect of a developer, and that's great, and they were into it, which I was pleasantly surprised by. I didn't have much of a job hunt either. I also had an interview coming out of Career Day, had my second interview a few days later, got a job offer on the spot, and then I had a job.
I think the hardest thing about the transitioning into the job hunt is the transition, because everything is moving so fast during your the 12 weeks of the full immersive experience at Prime, and then you go to graduation, and the next week you're like, Monday you wake up, it's like, what do I do now? Like by now we would have done like all these small little projects, and now I have to send out resumes and do follow-up calls. I also had a pretty good experience with employers when I went through my interview process. I don't think that the non-traditional background has been much of a barrier, at least in this market. So it seems like it's as long as you can show that you know what you're talking about and show that you can code and you know how to solve these problems. That's really what they're looking for in a lot of these jobs. So.
And the stuff that you're coding in doesn't necessarily have to match. Like I work in a different stack than I learned at Prime, and I think that's pretty common for Prime grads.
How about you, Josh? How was your what was your pathway into Fjord?
I think it was pretty quick after Prime. They had come in for a Career Day or shortly thereafter, and so just kind of based off of what everyone else has said. You know, I think in this market, it's very much the soft skills that Prime is teaching, and it's something that we look for at Fjord in any new hire, and not so much your technical ability. We want to make sure you have the capacity to do the job, but it's really the soft skills that we're looking at. And then as far as kind of the transition, I think there's definitely a period of like homesick where you leave this great community and you're like, man, this is much different at work. And even just, I think there's kind of 2-week gap between graduation and starting work, and I would come into Prime to just kind of still have that feeling, but it wasn't there because you're not with your cohort doing everything. So there was definitely a transition, and it was something that I missed, but you begin to develop that at your job over time.
We talked a little bit there, and you guys had mentioned some areas where, you know, you're grabbing brunch, you're grabbing lunch, you're staying connected, you're doing happy hours and stuff with your cohort mates. Can you talk a little bit about places where you've had or you've participated in connections with the community overall? So kind of like, you know, especially kind of in some of the online spaces and stuff that we maintain that you engage in as a student that also persist off as an alumni.
Like with the Prime community or with the tech community?
Yeah, specifically with the Prime community, but kind of anything's relevant. But looking at, like, say, like the Slack community that we maintain, and, you know, how have you guys engaged with people there, gotten, you know, either been able to offer support for people that are going through the program, or gotten support from other alumni as you've kind of even maybe been facing technical challenges or whatever at your jobs?
I know in the first 2 weeks on the job, I was definitely on Slack asking people like, hey, I'm running into this. Are you experiencing this? Or what's your job like? You know, all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, continue to, like, I'm constantly seeing stuff through Slack and all the different channels or communities. And I wish I could be more involved with some of them. I know, like, the Internet of Things is something I've had an interest in, but haven't had a chance to go to. So there's an amazing kind of culture around just the graduates.
Cool.
Slack has definitely saved my butt on more than one occasion. I'm a one-woman dev team, and so I don't actually have like folks here that I can ask for help. So I have had, I have had my butt saved pretty hard by being able to have access to Prime Alumni Snack to be like, help! And then people are great, and they've been really helpful, and I figured out my way through things with that.
Have you guys found that you've made connections? I mean, so obviously we've talked a lot about the connections that you build within your cohort and kind of with the people that you're experiencing it through. Have any of you guys been able to make connections with people outside of your cohort, either online or through some of you are mentors, so that definitely kind of helps to forge bonds. But
I know going. Oh, go ahead.
well,
Yeah,
start, Kelly. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think it was pretty easy to make connections with people in other cohorts, especially during the job hunt process. Prime has a really good program to keep in touch with everybody and help them along through that process. I forget exactly what it's called now, but it was like every Wednesday you'd meet up and you'd go through, you talk about the interviews you've gone through, your experience, how many people are responding, how they're responding. And so you're connecting with more than just your cohorts there, and you see everybody going through the same thing as you. And this is kind of, I still keep in touch with some people and have helped them go along through their job hunt process after I found a job, and help them, get through, the top 10. So.
Because I know of the four of you, I think three of you work for organizations that have more than one Prime grad working there, right? So that's that. And that definitely, I know that's one of the things that we're really excited about as the network grows, being able to really see that expansion and be able to have people come in and be able to reach out to folks like you guys and say, oh, what's it like to work there, and get that exposure.
So I have a question that I can dive into, and you can thank Josh for priming this one for me. So Josh, you mentioned earlier that when you interview people, you try to adopt some of the similar style. For all of you, how would you answer the question that I get all the time, which is, what should I be doing to prepare for the program, or what type of things generally make a good applicant to Prime?
You have to be willing to learn, and you have to be okay with failing and with getting through that process and learning from it. And be curious, because curiosity helps a lot.
Yeah, I would say be excited and be passionate, and also be relaxed, because you're going to mess up, and it's best to just be like, well, I messed up, and just relax and get through it. And I think being open helps a lot. When you can share what you're going through, then that really helps get through it and learn and connect with other people.
So you guys are all you're out, you're all grown up, and you're in the real world, and being developers and doing great work out there. Can you talk a little bit about how you're using the skills that you developed at Prime, and kind of like just what are you up to? Like, what is the kind of work that you're doing day to day now? Let's just go down the line. I'll start with Ian.
Oh, okay. I use the skills that I learned at Prime, not only all day at work, but pretty much just all the time, like in my life and in my interactions with other people and pretty much everything I do. I work by myself. I'm a one-person dev team. I am all the way across the stack, and I get to do all kinds of stuff that I did not anticipate doing. I set up DevOps for the company that I work for, got to figure out my way through that. That was right after I started, and so I've gotten to do a bunch of other cool stuff. I code in languages that I had not touched at Prime, but the skills that I learned at Prime are how to learn, how to figure things out, how to find things, how to ask for help, how to get through the process of working it out. And I use that all the time, because that is what I do. I work it out and figure it out.
Josh, how about you?
I think, just immediately starting after Prime as a developer, it was just the ability to, kind of take on any challenge. And you had this confidence kind of coming out of Prime that you could learn quickly. And working with different ad agencies, we constantly see something different. It's never kind of the same CMS platform. It's always something different. And then kind of moving now into a project management role and leading part of our front end team, I really enjoy the team building and kind of the mentorship of bringing on new employees and relating to how they feel and what they're going through and trying to bring them up to speed and incorporate them into our team.
Kelly, how about you?
So I get to work in a lot of what we learned at Prime, which is really helpful, but I've of course run into things that I don't know. And I think the most valuable thing that I learned, one of the most valuable things that I learned at Prime was not just specific technologies, but how to learn when you don't know what you're doing. And when I have encountered things that I have no experience with, I think Prime gives you a really good primer for how to get around that and how to figure out what's going on. And then another really valuable thing that I've used in my job is all of the other stuff that Prime provides with talking you through feeling like you don't know what you're doing and you're not good enough and all of those things. I definitely felt that at the beginning of my job, and making a transition from paying someone to answer my questions to like now I'm getting paid and I don't know what I'm doing sometimes made me feel like that. So I thought back on a lot of the other skills that I learned at Prime, and that really helped me on my job.
Cool. Savio?
Yeah, just kind of echoing what everybody is saying, that the thing that I take away from Prime, and I think a lot of people take away from Prime, is the process of how to get through something when you don't know like anything. Learning how to frame your questions and escalate up to someone who does know, or show that you've worked through this far and know how to specifically say, this is exactly where I'm stuck and I've tried these things. That kind of process really helps your team when you're at work, so they don't have to ask all these questions to know where you're at. They have a good idea of where you're at, and they can at least, they might not be able to give you the answer, but at least give you direction, which I think is really useful. Also, this is a question that I get from a lot of people that are interested is, Prime teaches the mean stack, JavaScript, but we know like the market is, there's a lot of .NET or Java. How does Prime prepare you for that? And I would just say that in my work, as a consultant, every client has different technology stacks. They all have different needs. And since, I've been here 5 months, I've worked with Angular, which is really useful because that's what Prime taught us. But I've also been doing work in Java, a little bit of C#, and just a little bit of everything. And it's not as scary to jump into it when, Prime gave you a really good foundation of how to learn a new technology. So that's just kind of one thing I wanted to throw in.
Cool. So how are you guys, just kind of generally, you're all in various kind of stages of going through, and maybe actually real quick, one thing we haven't said is maybe if you guys could just say, how long ago it was that you graduated, and maybe just a little bit of like how you're feeling, like, what is your stance on the future and kind of the things you're excited about learning, or are there specific areas that you're angling towards wanting to learn more, or kind of keep your education going?
I can go first. So I graduated in April, and I got my job in August, and I think I forgot the rest of your questions, but I think I feel really good about my future, and it's just kind of like endless learning. You're so like, I'm in the industry now, and then every time I see something new, I look into it and say, well, maybe I want to learn it. And you're just going off to try to pick these new things up all the time, and it's just it's a good sign, I think, for me to know that I'm passionate about some random technology that pops up in like my newsfeed. So I feel pretty good.
Cool. How about you, Kelly?
I graduated in December and started working in December. And something I'm really excited about is mobile development. I like the detail-oriented stuff, and I did a lot of stuff with responsive screens and whatnot in our group project. And I am excited that I'm getting to do a lot of that work now and want to continue learning that. And something I also really like is seeing what other people are working on, and when they have something successful, then like, look at this, I can do this, and this thing can do this. And then I get to learn little tidbits from what they're working on, and that makes me excited, and then I want to go learn more about what they're doing too.
Cool. How about you, Josh?
So I graduated, we were in the second cohort, so in October, a year and a half ago almost. So the one thing that I tell people, I mean, it's such a great space to be in this industry right now. A lot of graduates that I talk to are so worried about choosing the right tech stack to get into. And I mean, the one thing that I can say is there's so much opportunity right now that once you find a job, it doesn't mean you can't switch into a different tech stack. There's really a lot of different ways you can go. And I think, getting that first job into the industry kind of gives you an idea or an open window into what else is out there, and you can kind of move from there.
How about you, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about what Josh said, like, I'm doing different things than I thought I would be doing, which is actually great. And I get to do a little bit of everything, which is awesome because I get to figure out what I'm excited about working on. And I'm still working on a lot of like side projects. I still do hackathons. I pretty much want to learn and do all the things, which is great. I'm excited about what I'm doing, and I'm excited about my career. And I didn't used to be able to say that, so that's super exciting. And yeah, in the future, I want to get more into penetration testing stuff because it's interesting and not really something that I've gotten to learn before. And DevOps are fun, which I actually didn't expect. So I might go further with that too.
Cool. So kind of the last question for the day before we let everybody go. So there's a lot of people, often the people who consume these sort of resources and that will sit and listen to Q&A videos that are pre-recorded or tune into them for those of us that are joining us live, are often folks who are on the fence. They're kind of looking for that nudge one way or another to help them decide whether or not they're ready for what's next. From each of you guys, do you have like, your sentence or two, your kind of brief, what would your bit of advice be for those folks on taking the leap and kind of being ready or knowing that you're ready, or kind of what helped you to make that change?
If you made it an hour into this so far, get your application in, I would say. I mean, you're clearly on the fence. And, the last thing you want to do is, opt yourself out without giving yourself a chance. And that goes through even into the job application process. And I think the biggest thing that Prime helps you is understanding not putting yourself at a disadvantage and, building some confidence in yourself and knowing that you can get through any problem. So cool.
I would say just go for it. And you're not only going to just gain a bunch of technical skills, but you're going to gain a lot of soft skills and a wonderful community of support, and you'll learn a lot about yourself going through it. And no matter what, you're going to come out a better person for it, and you'll understand yourself better.
Yeah, I think my only bit of advice is if you're thinking about it, go through the application, go through the interview. Otherwise, you just really don't know. If your block is not being sure if you want to do it, at least get through those first steps of like starting the process of going through it. Then by then you'll find out, is this right for me? Is this, should I? It'll answer all of your questions on what you're blocking, but you can't get those answered if you're sitting there staring at the application, thinking about it. Just do it.
You get the last word, Ian.
Okay. I would say make sure that your life is ready for it. Make sure that you have your family support lined up, that you have your work stuff lined up. Like, make sure you get your ducks in a row. But once you do that, like, it's so completely worth it. If you're on the fence, like, go for it. It will change your life.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate you guys all taking the time to share your stories with everybody out there on the internet, and telling them about kind of how you guys have made a shift into development and what it's meant to you. Again, we definitely are really, really happy to answer questions. We have monthly open houses for people out in the audience who might be interested in learning more about Prime, where you can come in and see the space and meet some students, meet the instructors, be able to go from there. You also can always reach out to us at hello@primeacademy.io with any questions you might have prior to getting an application in. And we're really always happy to be talking to people about that. But once again, Josh, Savio, Kelly, Ian, thank you so much for the time. It has been great catching up with you guys and seeing where you're all at, and we're super proud of you. So thanks for representing us well. And last reminder for folks out there in the audience, we do have a deadline for software development that's on the books for tomorrow. Spoiler alert, we are going to extend that through the weekend, so you have a few extra days, so don't stay up late if you don't need to. But we also have, for those of you that are interested in our user experience design program, we have a deadline coming up for that on February 10th. So thanks so much for your time, for everybody in the audience. Thank you guys on our panel today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.